just had an incredible conversation with Julianna Larsen, the founder of Arizona Refugee Center here in Mesa, Arizona. We talked about resilience, humanity, and the power of starting something when the systems are falling short. After years of volunteering in refugee resettlement, Juliana launched the center in 2023 to fill a growing gap, providing direct, compassionate support to families arriving from Afghanistan, Sudan, South America, and beyond. In this episode, we dive into her story, what drove her to this work, and the challenges that refugees in Arizona face every day. And most importantly, how the Arizona Refugee Center, one team, one small but mighty team, is making a difference. One family at a time. Well, super excited to have you, Juliana, with the Arizona Refugee Center. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to start at the beginning because you're from Arizona originally, right?
Yep, born and raised in the East Valley.
Tell me a little bit about growing up in Mesa, and you know that community so well. It sounds like I'd love to hear a little bit about your background.
Sure. So born and raised in Mesa, Arizona. Um, Lived a charmed life. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and wonderful parents who were always reaching out and giving to community members. We always wanted to have a little bit of diversity because in Mesa, growing up, there wasn't a lot of diversity. We call it our little Mesa bubble. And went to, public schools and everything else. Went away to college, went to University of Utah in Salt Lake City, studied first broadcast journalism, and then came back and then married my husband. He's from St. George, Utah. Met him up at the University of Utah as well. He's a computer engineer, and then changed my major to communications and came back to Mesa because my husband's employment took us here, and have 6 children and just busy. I was a stay-at-home mother for many years. When my youngest went to kindergarten, I started to think, okay, now what? I was always very active in PTA and served on a variety of different boards. Started out of my garage, we called it the West Mesa Christmas Project, where there was a little trailer park that was actually in my area, and embarrassed to say I didn't know that it was even there and the conditions that people were living in for years. And one day we had the opportunity to go and take Christmas to a family there. And I looked around and saw all of these other beautiful eyeballs looking at me in these completely dilapidated trailers, and felt horrible that we were taking truckloads of Christmas to one little trailer when there were so many in need. And so it wasn't this feel-good Christmas experience that I was hoping for, to pat myself on the back and say, look at us. We're so privileged and we got to take Christmas to somebody. It devastated me to see that there was so much need. And so that Christmas morning, I gathered my brothers and sisters and told them about my experience, and decided that next year, every child in that trailer park would receive Christmas from us. And so didn't know how it was going to work, but knew it would work, and knocked on every trailer, left them an English and Spanish wish list, and told them Christmas would be delivered by the 24th, and gathered so many resources, and people kind of came out of the woodwork. And that went on for 18 years. And it was out of my garage. It wasn't like a nonprofit or anything like that. It was just people bringing food. My father loved to go to Food City, and he bought boxes and boxes of food, and we would distribute like 100 families Christmas with a variety of people. I had people that just heard about it and said, we want to do all the stockings, or I'd heard about it and say, we want a family. So we spent years just matching people up and working out of my garage. And so that kind of, I would say, catapulted me into the world of immigrants and people my children were going to school with. We were a Title I school. I kept my children in public school. I knew that these were kids that my children were going to school with, and worked with the local schools for also families, Carson, Westwood, and Emerson Elementary School. matched families up, typically families that lived in East Mesa, farther in East Mesa, Gilbert, that were looking for an opportunity to give, and they didn't know where, because it's really difficult to find out how you can help. And so I just felt like I was just a conduit maybe for people to get to know people and feel good about people. And that went on for years and years, and just really was a beautiful part of our Christmas giving. And so unbelievably, I was always blown away at the generosity of people and the fact that people wanted to give, they just didn't know where. And so then that transitioned into, gosh, my oldest was second grade. So that was, I couldn't give you a year, like maybe, 2000 is when that started. And then started transitioning into looking for other service opportunities in my community. Hopped on what we call the justserve.org, which is a really incredible website where you can just log on and match yourself with other nonprofits. And it's for small groups. And so I gathered like 6 ladies in my community and said, we're starting a service group. We're going to start volunteering at a different place every other week. And went all over to Sunshine Acres and to Positive Christi and to St. Vincent de Paul and MWAG, which is Muslim organization in Chandler, and Welcome to America Project, and just would try out all of these different spaces. And my heart continuously went back to the refugee organizations. And so kind of started my journey that way, just deciding where my time needed to be filled. And so I went to Welcome to America Project, started partnering with them for a while. And as I was like setting up apartments for refugee families and getting to meet some of these families, I thought, well, who's enrolling them in soccer? And what's the next step for these families? It's great that we're giving and setting up beds and painting pictures, but then what? Who's mentoring them and helping them along their journey? And so thought I could do more and started.
Like most entrepreneurs and business owners that I speak with, they always have this one defining moment, it feels like, in their story that put them on the path of success that they end up on. And for you, it sounds like you have something similar, but more in the community and nonprofit space, having experienced that trailer park and seeing those conditions, realizing there is a need, and thus just deciding to fill that need. And it's so incredible when someone doesn't get caught up in, say, the bureaucracy or the politics or any community red tape when they see there's an issue and I just want to solve it. What made you want to just keep it grassroots and out of your garage? It sounds like for 18 years versus at that time, I'm sure there were other organizations you could have gotten involved with, or maybe there wasn't. Just what made you want to start it grassroots and keep it grassroots for as long as you did?
Debated actually a lot, like, do it, because there were people that were like, well, can I get a tax donation? I'm like, well, I'm not a nonprofit. Like, you can give if you want to give, with no strings attached. I didn't want the red tape and the bureaucracy of it. And I honestly, to be honest with you, I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't think I was capable of launching that type of a I didn't want to, I didn't want the undertaking of it. And not, yeah, I just didn't. And I loved the way that it was organic, and that it was there wasn't any with bureaucracy and red tape and immigrants and serving and nonprofit space and 501(c)(3)s. There are restrictions. And so you can only serve eligible clients sometimes when you're dealing with funding, or you kind of have to serve differently. And so I didn't want to jump into that space. And I just loved the feeling that brought to so many people without having to mess with the messy stuff. And it just felt so much better and easier. But really it was like our creation and something we wanted to do. Like you said, there is so much red tape and bureaucracy and in starting a nonprofit. And then I feel like the focus shifts a little bit. It is about funding. It is about, and I love accountability. I run a nonprofit. It is all about accountability at this point. but out of my garage, I just didn't feel like it was necessary.
A point that you made was it was so easy to do. And sometimes I think people see a need or an issue and they want to help, and maybe they don't know the best way. You landed on just serve, it sounds like, which is wonderful. But I think it's a healthy reminder for everyone. There's so many different ways to support and help in your community, and it doesn't look the same for everyone. So just find the right fit for you. But I'm glad you did start your nonprofit and decided to embrace the bureaucracy
It was necessary at that point. But to go back to your point, I always say, it used to frustrate me because people give differently and they want to serve in different spaces. And in the beginning, I was a little bit offended. How do you not see the good in this? And I kind of got to the point where I'm like, my cause is not everybody's cause, and that's okay. Find your cause, do something. And so there are spaces that may not fulfill my heart because it's not where it is, right? The direction of that. But it doesn't mean it's not a fantastic cause. And so I think anytime that we can think outside of our bubble ourselves, even our own family units, we can find that there are spaces just waiting for volunteers and money and our time and our hearts, our advocacy. It doesn't have to look the same for everybody.
and I think that's again such an important point, and I hope that this conversation encourages people to get involved and find a way that works for them. So that brings us to your wonderful organization, Arizona Refugee Center, that I had a chance to come tour, and I was so impressed with you and your team and the operations. Before we dive into how you opened it, the mission, I think it might be helpful if we set up some key terms, if you don't mind, for those who don't know, or maybe they think they do. I think when we chatted at the center, right, you talked about refugees versus immigrants. So, can you give some context perhaps around those terms and others that will help people understand really truly who you serve at the refugee center?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we serve anyone. But our focus is refugees and immigrants, and asylum seekers, and those with special immigrant visas, and those with family-based petitions. Really, anybody that is looking for refuge from the barriers that they're facing in a new country and a new land. And so the word refugee is very specific as far as an immigration term. We know that refugees are those who have to flee their country because of war, because of economic situations, natural disasters, political reasons. And so that is a refugee. When you flee your country, you are placed in what they call the UNHCR. It's the Refugee Admissions Program. And so there's 2 years ago, there was 31 million displaced refugees that were enrolled under this refugee umbrella. So it's an enrollment process to become a refugee. Doesn't just mean you leave your country, although that is, a broader definition. But there is a process for refugees. Most people, I think less than 1% will be resettled into another country, and there's only 4 countries that take refugees. The United States is one of them, and it's limited per administration. They determine how many refugees the United States will allow into their country under this refugee umbrella. Then the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. So those are the 4. And historically, the United States takes the least amount of refugees under this admissions program. They are vetted. They're living in refugee camps or close proximity to those camps. Once they're registered, they kind of get in this list of millions of people waiting to be resettled. They usually will not just pick one particular country. They kind of diversify that, and people from Congo and Syria and Sudan and Sierra Leone and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Malaysia and Burma and all of these countries of conflicts. And Somalia is another one, Eritrea, Ethiopia. All of these countries are typically part of that refugee admissions program. And then it's like winning the lottery. You get your lucky ticket and they process you. It takes about 2 years to begin the refugee process. After they've lived in camps, we have several clients that have lived in camps for anywhere between 8 to 25 years. And then they are able to come to the United States as refugees. They are allowed 3 to 6 months with a resettlement agency, and they don't get to pick which state they arrive in. They are just, depending on the state's capacity and funding, they will be resettled into a state. So if they come to Arizona, they're resettled by, there's 4 different agencies. There's the International Rescue Committee, which is the IRC, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Social Services of the Southwest, and AIRS. It's Arizona Refugees Services. And so those are the 4 resettlement agencies. They pay their rent for 3 to 6 months. They have 5 requirements: enrolling in school, making sure that they have benefits and their medical screenings are completed. They find them housing. They set them up with some kind of employment and make sure that they are employed, and then make sure that they have, that they are like some cultural adaptation, right? Taking mass transportation. There's a packet that they have to do. So that's a refugee. Okay. So they have support services for a very limited time, and they need more services than that. And then we have immigrants who typically have come to the United States finding a better life. Okay, so they maybe for financial reasons they need to send money home. And then you have asylum seekers. Okay, and immigrants come from all over the world. They're not just from Mexico or South America. Sometimes we talk about immigrants and we lump them all into, oh, they're all from Mexico. It's just not the case. And so we have many South American immigrants. Many of them come over on work visas. Many of them come over on, there's a variety of visas. They can visitors visas, but it's not a permanent status. And then you have asylum seekers who have come to the border, or they can land. I have several clients from Iran who've come because they're Christians or different countries, and they're fleeing religious persecution. They are not permanent residents. They have to file what we call asylum, and they have to have a credible fear or a credible story, a credible history of fear. So if you come to the Mexican border, you can claim asylum. You can't do it in your country. You have to be on American soil. So they surrender themselves to detention. They're there. They either can go before a judge there, or they will be released and they can file their asylum here in the United States. And then the 4th way, well, there's family-based petitions. Of course, you marry a U.S. citizen, you can apply for your family members. You have children, brothers and sisters. That process takes years and years. You're vetted through a visa process, and then you come to the United States, or a special immigrant visa, which I do a lot of special immigrant visas because I work with a lot of the Afghans who help the United States military. Those are reserved for Iraqis and Afghans. And so those are really the only 4 ways to receive permanent residency in the United States. That's it. There aren't, thousands of ways to just come to the United States and stay. People always say, just have them do it legally, but the amount of the time that it takes and the process, it isn't easy. And there's not just a path for everybody. And so those are the differences. They all need help. They all need support services. They all need language abilities, employment, if they can work here legally. They need proper documentation completed, helping with work permits and social security cards if they are eligible to receive those. And again, those requirements they're set, and so we help them navigate through that process.
And what a complicated process it sounds like. I mean, so I know based on our conversations already that you've always had a desire and an internal need, it seems like, to help serve underserved communities. But I guess I'm curious because of the 4 buckets, they're still all complicated ways to get into the US legally and to get support services. But it sounds to me like you know these systems and processes like the back of your hand. How long did it take you, native to the US, English speaking, how long did it take you to really understand these systems to be able to work within them and support people?
Well, first of all, it's forever changing, right? It's morphing into, so I get up early and read and to see what is changing at this point. But I started in the refugee space at a place called the Somali American United Council. I started just volunteering, teaching English at nights to a group of about 25 Somali and Eritrean and Sudanese refugees. They were all under the refugee process. So I started to understand what a refugee is. I didn't know before then. I had no idea the differences. And you just assume everybody with a burqa or is a refugee, and then everybody who is from South America or Mexico is an immigrant, which it's too naive because that's not always the case. And so I learned about the refugee admissions process that way. And I was fascinated by it because it was something new. It was something I had never experienced. I'd never been in a room full of Muslims. And after my first class, I was hooked. I'm like, we found so many similarities in our lives instead of all of these vast differences that I thought existed. And so I started there, and they would stay after class and just have me read their mail. They would bring me a garbage sack full of just, like a grocery sack full of their mail. And can you sort through this? Can you look at this? And they were just looking for somebody to do that for them. Yes, this is important. Yes. Okay. Come back tomorrow. We'll call on this. So I would help them make a plan for like everyday living, right? Just, yes, this is important. No, this is not. Yes, you need help with this. This is, can you help my child enroll in school? Absolutely. So things that there were so many barriers that they were facing, and they didn't know where to look for help. And so I stayed after class for an hour, and then it was 2 hours. And what I found with a lot of refugees and immigrants is they don't typically trust their community leaders. A lot of times their community leaders, they've come from countries where anybody in their community of leadership, they were the bad guys. They were the ones taking advantage. They were the ones taking money. They were the ones using rape and incest and all of the horrible things that happen to underserved communities. They were the ones that were the perpetrators. And so there was this instant level of trust with me, maybe because I'm blonde hair, blue eyes. I don't know. Maybe because I was willing to help them, but there was this instant rapport. And so it was line. It just grew. Oh, this woman will help you, even if it is reading your mail, even if it is enrolling children in school. And so I just started gathering more volunteers to come and help at this Somali American. And I was there for 7 years. We had immigration clinics. We would bring in ASU law students every month, and they would people could come and just ask their immigration questions with no strings attached and get legal advice for free. So there were a lot of different programs that we started there. Women's empowerment and sewing, which is not women's empowerment to me, but it is to our immigrant communities. They love sewing classes. I can't sew a button. Digital literacy classes. When COVID hit, we were frantic trying to get parents online. Do you know where your children's parent portal is? How can you have access to your children's learning? There was such a huge discrepancy from, I was struggling with my kids at home with, a husband with a master's and me with a college degree, and we couldn't teach our children the things that they needed to know. And so we were really pushing digital literacy at that point for women, especially workforce development, making sure we have resume building. We worked with Maricopa County. So I just learned a lot and made really great partners in Phoenix. The office was on 24th Street in Thomas. What I found the longer I served the refugee community is it's a really small number of people in the Valley serving refugees and immigrants. There's not good community-based organizations. There's just not a lot of them. And a lot of them aren't great ones.
You said on our tour that you were surprised at the number of refugees in your own backyard, which is part of why you wanted to open your center. I think you also mentioned that because you had so much experience and connections in Phoenix, transitioning to Mesa, you've had some hurdles to overcome. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, who you're partnering with successfully in the East Valley, and perhaps even who you'd like to be partnering with, and how we can get your message out there.
Thank you. So I was in Phoenix, like I said, for 7 years. Started just in my heart, knew that I needed to work in my community. Didn't know what that would look like. I just it was March of 2023 when I started thinking, I was looking around at the schools, volunteering still at my children's school. I'm volunteering in my church community, and I'm visiting homes of families in my area that I thought, who's helping them? I have this office in Phoenix that I'm forcing, Afghans and people to drive to. And there's a Syrian community, and there are Somalis that were coming to the Mesa because they knew that their schools were better. And at the time they were being resettled there. When Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, we took on 2,500 Afghans, and there was not housing in Phoenix. It was a really, everybody was like in crisis looking for apartments and housing. And so really for the first time, resettlement agencies reached out to faith-based communities and community members saying, can you please just rent to an Afghan family? And so there were about 10 that I personally knew that were resettled in my children's school district. And so I thought, oh, they're here. There was a group of 300 pilots, Blackhawk pilots that served along the United States military that were resettled in Chandler and Gilbert. And that was really the first time resettlement was happening in the East Valley. And it took me about a year to be brave enough to think, okay, maybe I need to serve in the East Valley. There is an organization called Matthew's House. Lisa McDonald is the founder of that. It's an incredible organization, and they are way in the East Valley, and they've supported many, many families. They're wonderful. And they do they have a different space that they serve in. A lot of it is housing. And so I just thought Mesa needs to love immigrants and welcome immigrants somehow, some way. So that started in March of 2023, and it took me until September to be brave enough to open Arizona Refugee Center. It felt very lonely and isolating in the beginning. I started in a small office space just up the road. I thought I didn't know what this would look like. I didn't know what the transformation would be. I went in with zero vision other than I know I want to help the immigrants in this area. And so they didn't have to, one more barrier to drive to Phoenix. I knew I had a niche or an area of expertise that I knew I could be helpful and wanted to be helpful right here in Mesa. And so that was September. I opened, I moved to a different space on 35 North Alma School Road, and right here 5 minutes from my own home. And again, my children's schools, the community where I grew up in, and my church community and other faith-based organizations here, and just wanted to kind of see what the need was. I knew there was a need. I didn't know. Truly, I didn't know what the need was. And again, immigration was changing. CBP One app was really beginning to kind of, people were coming with the CBP One app to the United States. And so Haitians and Cubans and Venezuelans and Nicaraguans, the demographic I had not tapped into before, here they were legal here in the United States. And so, but they didn't have resources. They weren't refugees. So that federal funding serves refugees. So they didn't have support. There was no support for this particular demographic. And so that our office just bursted with these beautiful people, all Spanish speakers, French Creole speakers, and then me. Okay, I don't speak any languages, I say, except for just I know all the bad words in every language. And I'm not proud of it, but that's just what sticks. And so, good morning. Good, how are you? Good. There is school today. Yeah, come on in. Sweet Haitian. And so then people said, we want classes. Okay, so we added another space for classes. And really, they were just volunteers. There was no partnering in the beginning. I went and met with the mayor of Mesa, John Giles at the time, set up a meeting with him, had housing and development there as well, kind of said, this is what I see happening in Mesa. And I had gone to a variety of local Spanish-speaking churches, trying to just gain momentum, trying to understand who is serving. So I didn't duplicate services. I went to New Leaf and Child Crisis and these wonderful organizations, but they, again, we talked about the bureaucracy and red tape, they're limited in who they can serve. because of eligibility requirements. I didn't want that. I didn't want government funding. I didn't want government federal money because I knew what that looked like. I had ran a federal grant in Phoenix and for a variety of, for the Somali American, but working with other nonprofits. And a lot of why I left was because I was tired of turning people away that needed help. And so I knew that that would not be my mission. I knew that anybody who walked in our doors would be served without questions and eligibility requirements. And so that's how this began, and it has just grown. We've served since we've opened our doors in September of 2023. So we're almost 2 years into this. We've served over 2,000 immigrants and refugees and homeless, veterans, you name it, children. And it just continues to grow. Even with the flow has stopped for our immigrant friends or our asylum seekers, they are here and they still need support. And so we have English classes that happen daily and nightly. We have, we were giving out food and hygiene, and for those especially coming across, those asylum seekers, we help with housing. We do it all without any funding and partners. So we work with other organizations. Cox Charities had given us a grant for computers, so we of course can do that. Gathered Humanity is a wonderful partner. ICNA Relief, which is a Muslim-run organization, nationwide organization, has been a partner. Held classes here for a year, used our space, and then we, of course, our clients were able to attend their classes. So there's other good nonprofits that we partner with. But City of Mesa has been tough to break into. After our meeting with Mayor Giles, reaching out to different housing partners has been tough. Reaching out to Mesa businesses is not been real easy. And so we're trying.
So one of my favorite things about you thus far, if I may be so bold, is that you are a direct, honest person, that you don't shy away from difficult conversations or difficult realities. And I know one of the things we talked about was, even though, as you said, the inflow of new individuals into our country that need assistance has stopped, you still have plenty of people that are here that need your help, right? One of the realities that you're facing is, for many reasons, you're having difficulty finding partners to support you on the housing side as well as the workforce side. And I think, to call a spade, this might be a direct quote, but I think you said something to the effect of, not everyone is willing to hire Mohammed, even though he might be the most qualified candidate and will probably work harder than any other candidate that you have. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the difficulties you're facing around those areas.
Absolutely. So a lot of the work that I do primarily is with our Afghan allies, our friends that were maybe mechanics for our Humvees and the helicopter mechanics, or maybe they were doctors. We have plastic surgeons, females, dentists. We have a variety of people who have, pilots. They've gotten their HVAC certification. They've come, and what we do with refugees and immigrants is the minute we get here, we try easy partners, right? We say, okay, Marriott, Sheraton downtown, we could you use some housekeepers? And so we place our very skilled laborers and say, okay, all we can do, because your English is limited, is you're going to just work in a hotel and you're going to just clean hotel rooms. And not that there's anything wrong with that type of work. But they're willing to do it for a short time because it's easy for us to, so we get lazy as resettlement agencies. We get lazy as, as workforce development people to say, okay, you're there. Okay, you've got to pay your rent in 3 months. So you're going to clean hotel rooms. And so what happens is they get stuck. How are they they're working 40 hours a week. And then we're asking them to learn a new language, go to HVAC school at night or plumbing school. I had a client yesterday that really wants to be a plumber. He was a skilled painter and did construction in Afghanistan along with working in the military. And he's like, I want to get a plumbing certificate. So okay, how can we make this happen? So but we get lazy because it's easy, right? We have these easy basic partners in the hospitality space and say, we're going to place you in that employment. And then what? Okay, so these are people with families. They're in jobs without any upward mobility, and they're stuck there, and they can't improve how they want to live their lives, or really that American dream, especially if you are a father of 4 or 5 kids that are here. There just aren't those opportunities for them to have any type of workforce growth. A lot of them come to me after. Some of them have figured out, okay, I'm going to get my CDL licensing. And Maricopa County had a great program to help pay for that. A lot of them have went on to get their HVAC certification or construction management, just certifications. And so then they would come to me and they say, okay, I've got this certificate. It's taken me a year. I've got it. Now what? Can you help me find a job? They were working at Sheraton downtown in Phoenix. And so maybe they transitioned into the maintenance, but they really weren't working in that HVAC field. So I'm like, you know what? Let me reach out. I've got friends in the HVAC that, business owners that I know personally who've opened these companies. And so I'd reach out to them. Yeah, send me the resume over. I'd send it. Then I would follow up. Oh, everybody, I know they need them, but they just weren't willing to take a chance on them. And even when I would promise, like, listen, I will be their HR director here, it's really important to know somebody in HR. I tried to break into Sun State, which is a fantastic company, and for their CDL licensing, because we have a lot of commercial drivers that want local because their families are here. They can't just leave their families. There were just these barriers again, like, oh, it's just going to be a lot of work on our side. I know, but I'm handing you employers and I'm telling you, you can come to me if there's problems. I will provide an interpreter. I will provide the onboarding. We will do that, but I want to work together. And so having companies and corporations not even just take a chance. There's no chances to be taken. They're skilled. They have the certification. They're just looking for work. Having HR, it's almost like it's too messy. We just don't want to deal with it. It's a lot for us. You're right. It might, but it's really not that messy. And if there's any problems, give me a call and I'll have the tough conversation with them and sit them down. And so for me, it doesn't seem like they're legal to work. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. They have all the proper documentation. They're really ready and willing, and they have the certificates to back it up. I don't understand the issue here. So that has been a struggle for me. And I know that I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, and what's so frustrating for me to hear is, I'm in these conversations constantly across the East Valley about economic development and workforce development and the gap in between and what we're doing for our high schoolers to make sure they enter the workforce. But then on the business side, so many people can't find skilled workers. And then also, by the way, we know there's a shortage coming. There's already a shortage here, but more so of doctors and skilled laborers and da da da. I've been in so many of these conversations for the past 8 months. No one has talked about refugees in that equation. And it
Yes.
wasn't until I had that conversation with you at your center that I thought, why are we not proactively talking about this? There's so many people, it sounds like, in your world and who you serve that are perfectly capable of filling some of these gaps. And I don't understand why no one's talking about it.
They're there and they want it. They need it. And I look at again these families and think, maybe their English is somewhat broken, right? Um, but it would just take a little bit and employers are going to be training people anyway, and they're losing people that were here, our Haitians, our Cubans, they and Colombians, they're losing them. And so I think, why not have a little cohort? When our Afghans first came, I had a conversation. I drove past this Big O Tires in Phoenix, and I was like, I'm going to just stop. I've got mechanics like crazy that I personally had worked with. So I stopped by and spoke with the manager there, and he was like, yeah, let me take this up the chain. And come to find out, they were both military. They had served in Afghanistan, and so they wanted to help our allies. And so what we did is I said, okay, one is going to be a really skilled mechanic. The other is going to be more like his apprentice, but he's going to speak English. So maybe it was a father and son. Maybe it was just, friends, but one had more of an English abilities than this more skilled on the mechanic side. And so they hired two at a time. And this was Big O Tires around in Phoenix and other in Scottsdale and a few other locations. And it worked beautifully. Here you had a skilled mechanic, and then you had their translator that could kind of help with the onboarding, with the the directions maybe. And so the English speaker was learning as an apprentice as well, so he was paid a little less. And then the mechanic, they were earning certificates, they were earning their tool kits and their mechanic kits, and being paid a livable wage, and then doing really great work for Big O Tires. I have at least, and at first we started with about 12, but I was so grateful for them to take a chance on this. It took a little bit of time for me to I didn't have to talk anybody into it. They wanted to do it. It was just how, two at a time, we only do one. I'm like, I promise, if you have somebody that can help just with the English portion, it gives them a level of confidence, the other mechanic a level of confidence, your confidence will be greater in them. Two at a time is perfect. And so they did it. And I have, I think, 6 or 8 that are still working at Big O Tires. And so I think that's a pretty good percentage of, even though we started with a smaller group or a smaller cohort, I'm not asking for thousands to be employed at the same time, but just companies willing to kind of think outside the box. And it's only going to benefit Big O Tires in the long run. You're going to be investing in workforce, and you're going to get skilled laborers back. And so kind of taking that first step of being willing to think outside of the box a little bit with employment, I think is key for employers.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that business owners and employers have a lot on their plate. I totally understand that. But if they'd be willing to hear this message, understand the work that you're doing, truly understand there's an entire workforce that is like turnkey ready. They just need a door opened and a little bit of support.
Thank you.
Sorry.
They're driving Uber and Lyft. That's what they're doing right now. And so I feel like we're failing. And side note, Uber and Lyft is fine for Amazon Flex. But really on paper, it can't support their family. And so they, I have a spreadsheet because I was proving them wrong. So I signed up to be an Uber driver for a month so that I could show them really what they were making. And I know it was insane.
Their extra time.
No, it was insane. It was a trip. I had to put in 40 hours to get my point across. And so I did it, and targeted my gas and the mileage and the wear and tear on a car, the taxes and everything else at the time, and factored all of that in and tried to show them that no, this is not worth it. And I was right. So, but it is flexible. It is something that a lot of them do. And not because it's easy, but because right now it's really their only option. They're wanting full-time work. And in Arizona, come like April to September, hospitality is down. And a lot of these industries are just not, they can't give them the hours to support their families. And so they pick up multiple jobs, and they sit outside in this heat and wait for their Amazon, food delivery. And they sit in their hot cars and wait at the airport for 18 flights to come in with 120 cars waiting in the queue. So it is, we can do better. We can do better in the East Valley. There are so many incredible businesses, and there's a need, construction workers. And again, it's always, they go to Spanish speakers, right? Because a lot of they have Spanish speaking foremen, which I have lots of Spanish speaking clients that need work as well. But they don't necessarily take a chance on maybe Middle Eastern. And I've had conversations with people that they are fearful Well, will our business be a target if I hire a Saeed Mohammed? Well, why would you be a target? If you know what I'm saying? Like there's this fear too, which is completely unfounded. And so that's frustrating for me. And it's about education and getting to know some of these people as well.
Going back to the tough conversations we refuse to shy away from, right? I think that there are plenty of individuals out there, individuals of influence, whether they are a business owner, in politics, economic development, someone of influence, who their immediate reaction to someone like you or a mission like yours is, we got plenty of stuff to deal with at home. We have plenty of our own American brethren that need our support. Why on earth am I going to focus on helping refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, etc.? What would you say to someone with that kind of mindset?
There are many with that kind of mindset. First of all, I would like to see where they're giving because they're probably not giving anywhere, to be honest with you. Are you helping at home? Are you donating to food banks? Are you donating to veterans? What are you doing really to help people at our home? Number one is what I would say, because more than likely they're not. Um, and that's a judgment on my part. Maybe they are, but I doubt it. And the second thing is I would say is they are here. These are people that are here. They are making up the fabrics of our American community. They are here already. Refugees are here legally with permanent status indefinitely. If you're granted asylum, you're here indefinitely. They may look different. They may worship differently. They may smell differently because of the spices that they eat in their kitchen. They may use different languages, but they are here on American soil. And so it is our responsibility to care for the needy, to clothe the naked and to feed the hungry. And so I would say they're here. So that America first, do we want to make our communities better? Maybe understand who your neighbor really is. If you want to make your schools better, maybe serve in the school and allow your children to be kind, just to be nice to people of all different races and religions and people that again look a little differently than they do. They are here legally and lawfully. And why wouldn't we want to help any American? They want to be lawful, law-abiding citizens. That's their goal. And they have a path to citizenship as a refugee. They can't go back to their country, and they're here. They were granted legal status. So why wouldn't we put America first by helping them be the very best United States citizens that they can be? That's the misconception, is that send them all back to where and how? They have just the same rights to be here in the United States as we do. I just happen to be privileged enough to be born in this great nation. And so why not share the resources that we have with those that are here and that are our neighbors?
I grew up in Baltimore and I'm so unbelievably grateful for that experience because at that time, at that age, for a while, none of my neighbors looked like me. I had neighbors that were an Indian family, an Asian family, a Black family. I was exposed to so many different cultures and ways of thinking and different spices, which I still love and incorporate in my kitchen today. Exposed to so many different perspectives so early on that when we moved to Scottsdale for opportunities for my family, it was a bit of a culture shock. And I was reminded visiting you and talking with you today the importance of those experiences. And I really hope today's conversation inspires people to look beyond what they know and what they're comfortable with. What's your ask of the community? What can we do to help you and your organization? What are the big calls to action for you?
Calls to action number one is get to know an immigrant and refugee. Maybe understand, don't get your news from one particular source. Um, maybe broaden the scope of your mind and your heart to understand who refugees and immigrants are and what they truly do contribute to our East Valley and the region around us. So that would be one ask. If you do have a business and you want a Refugee 101 presentation, or if you want to understand immigration, reach out to us. We will come We will share what we know if you have opportunities for employment also, or that workforce development component. You're interested in that. Also reach out to myself, my partner, Robin Peterson. We'd love to partner. I would love City of Mesa to fund nonprofits, smaller nonprofits, smaller community-based organizations. It's a tough sell to live in the East Valley and to start a nonprofit in the East Valley serving this particular demographic and community. If you feel inclined, donate monetarily. If it's not my organization, there's incredible organizations that are doing really great work on the immigrant refugee side, or whatever it is that your heart tells you. If you want America first, donate to something that you feel is important to you. Just put your money where your mouth is. That's what I like to tell people, because they feel, they have this self-righteous desire to fight a cause, but they really aren't doing anything. You're with your heart, not just because you need to feel good about yourself. You're in a one-on-one space. We are partnering with another nonprofit. We're actually absorbing it. It's called Of One Heart, where it's a mentoring space where you and your family would be matched with another immigrant or refugee family that you just get to become their friends. I have families that need to learn how to swim because they have swimming pools in their apartment complexes. And so how great to have mentor families. Hey, let's our family teach you how to swim. Let's go to the zoo together. Let's just be friends. Like, again, without strings. So it's a beautiful, beautiful mentoring program that Arizona Refugee Center is now taking on. And I'm so excited about that. That merger happened yesterday. So I'm excited about that. I have a lot of asks. My goodness, donate. And again, if you can't donate, if you don't have the space to volunteer, and just take a few minutes to understand the differences, or even if there are no differences. Also, honey to a bee is it's in Tempe, but it's delicious, like Dubai chocolate, and owned by immigrants and refugees. Frequent refugee businesses and immigrant businesses start to, enjoy those spices and flavors, and look around your community and see who is here. Again, who is your neighbor. So the donate, really, that's really what we need. We just need your money.
Your team does such incredible work. You offer wraparound services. There's so many ways to help. There's so many ways to learn more. I'll link everything in the show notes and social posts, but I just want to say, Julianna, I'm super grateful for the time, for the work that you're doing, and the fact that you challenge the status quo and challenge the people and the mindset around you. I think that's really inspiring, and I hope you do this work for many, many years to come.
We're almost coming on 2 years, and it's bigger than and better than anything I could have envisioned for what this space would be. And so I'm so proud of the 20 to 30 volunteers that show up here every single week to just serve, to help with a variety of things every week. For me, that's been the greatest blessing, is to watch lives being transformed on both the volunteer side and the refugee side. And so it's this beautiful place of hope and magic is what I like to see it. And yesterday we have our 2 nuns that come with our Jewish lawyer serving Muslim community, and Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint Mormon missionaries. It's hilarious, like all in the same space, and nobody cares. I'm the only person that knows all of these things about these people, because they're just humans wanting to help other people. So it really is such a beautiful space. And I'm so proud of the team that we have here doing such great work.
We're going to have to do a part 2, and maybe I'll come in sight, because you've got just such a melting pot of individuals. And I think, a part 2 where we get to talk and share some stories would be lovely. But for now, you're incredible.
Oh, thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. And thank you for the interest in this space, because it does feel lonely. It feels lonely, and it feels like we are sometimes fighting these battles on our own, but I know that that's not the case. And so thank you for your heart and for all that you're doing for the city of Mesa.
My pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.